The following is a local resident producers program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Access Television, the City of Oshkosh, the Oshkosh Cable Television Advisory Commission, or Time Warner Cable.
Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of Eye on Oshkosh. I'm Cheryl Hentz, along with former Oshkosh Mayor and City Councilwoman Melanie Bloechl. As most of you regular viewers know, every 4 to 6 weeks we do what's called another Viewpoint. It's where just Melanie and I sit and shoot the crap.
Shoot the breeze.
Better than shooting the sheriff. Mike Brooks wouldn't like that if we did that. Plus we'd be in prison.
Yeah. We get a nice jail built now though, so
we do have a nice jail
housed
built
nicely.
So, yeah. Unless we went to prison. So, and you shoot the sheriff and you go to prison. So, anyway, we digress.
You digress.
We're going to just kind of chat for the next 58 minutes or so about things that are going on in the community, things that we like and things we don't like. Mm-hmm. So many things that are upsetting to us these days. Where would you like to start?
Well, it's been very interesting because at one of the last council meetings that we had, because of course the council, or at least the Fab Five as I affectionately call them,
yes,
are always one of my favorites to take off on. We were able to watch this sideshow called a council meeting, talking about the development of Riverside Park and the amphitheater. And I have to tell you, I've witnessed a lot of council meetings. I've participated in a lot of council meetings. I've not seen a sham quite like this in a good long time. It was so incredibly apparent that this deal was cooked so far ahead of time. Not only did they have the audacity to say, the original bonding was for like $750,000 to put pavers in and do all this water work and sewer work for the park. But then you had Bill Castle and our illustrious leader, Mark Harris, our new mayor, where they actually bumped up the cost. It wasn't insulting enough that the public had no input into this whole project or any communication about this entire project. Due to the fact that the Leaches donated what was a $1.3 million for just the shell.
For the band shell.
For the band shell.
For the amphitheater.
That was it. But now we're anting up, 3 times as much money to finish off the so-called donated project.
Well, Bill Castle, Councilman Bill Castle, wanted to up it to $2 million something, and they sort of cut it in half, and they bonded for, I guess, 1.2 or 1.3 million. But I think we need to back up a little bit. First of all, this whole project was raced through like you would not believe. Well, most of the citizens would believe it because they are upset and they are talking about it and they are not happy. This thing was in the council members' packets roughly 1 month before the vote was taken and the money was approved to be bonded for. Mm-hmm. There is no reason that this project had to be rushed through the way it was and basically rammed down the people's throats, the taxpayers' throats. The Leach Company donated $1 million something for a band shell. No one has yet been able to articulate to the citizens in this community why the band shell couldn't be built without all this extra stuff that has to go with it. Put up the stupid band shell so that people can plunk their rear ends down and listen to music. It's going to be very interesting to see what our Parks Department does with this band shell in the winter months. You're not going to be able to use it except for a few months out of the year, maybe 6, 7 months. out of the year.
Boy, that's
When the snow flies and starts filling up this band shell, that ought to be interesting. I sincerely hope that Mr. Tom Stefani, our Parks Director, is in there getting the snow out, because, you know, over a period of time, if you just let the snow sit there and melt, it'll, over a period of time, take its toll on the concrete.
well.
So,
Again, then there's maintenance costs and
well,
upkeep
kids
and-
are going to be putting graffiti on this thing like you wouldn't believe.
Oh, well, they have that problem down there all the time.
Well, but now we have one more thing. This was a not well thought out plan. B Tower, as he's called when it's time to take votes, Burke Tower, the newest member on the council, at the workshop 2 weeks prior to the vote being taken on this, asked some good questions, but Mr. Tower, you fall far short of being a responsible councilman, at least as far as this vote goes. You asked questions, you didn't get answers, yet you voted for it anyway. What was the point of asking the questions if you're not going to make them give you answers? Dumb decision as far as I'm concerned.
Well-
But then we had a meeting, we didn't, but we, the colloquial we, the royal we, the council members were all met by some of the big shots in the community, the John Ngalas, the Eileen Conley Kieslers, the Phil Martinis from C.R. Meyer, the movers and shakers in the community who wanted this project. They called each council member in for a meeting out at C.R. Meyer. Now there's neutral territory, that's not a conflict of interest at all, and talked to about why this would be a good project. They wanted this thing to be voted on with a 7-0 win. Well, obviously that didn't happen, but I'm sorry, when you are talking about a long-term project that is going to cost between $4 and $5 million, and that is 4 to 5 times more than the gift in the first place, then not only is that no longer a gift, ladies and gentlemen, but you damn well better include the public. When you're asking the public to ante up the money for it, to pony up the money for this project, as Paul Esslinger from the City Council calls it, the Pork in the Park project, and I think it couldn't be called anything better. When you're asking taxpayers to foot that kind of bill, 4 to 5 times what a highfalutin citizen has donated, then you'd better include the public, and that was not done. And the reason that it wasn't done, well, I'm sure that there are a number of reasons, but one of the reasons that was given to Mr. Esslinger was it costs money to hold a meeting in a place where you've got to rent the space. What is a few $100s for an hour or 2 of meeting time when you're talking and expecting and asking the taxpayers to cough up that kind of money? This was a sham, and you people should be ashamed of yourselves, as should the council members. Now, I'm not for no progressiveness, but I think we have to balance some things here. But in any event, so we had these private meetings with councilors and exclude the public. That was wrong. Then we had the council meeting. Mm-hmm. And so pick up where
Well,
you left off when I jumped in.
Well, I think, number one, we have to backtrack a little bit because, you know, I read some of these letters to the editor, and I read the editorials that the Northwestern reads, and we talk about, we use this word progressive as though it's interchangeable with poverty. You know, my problem with all of this, and I think you made really excellent points, and we share the same views on this. One citizen donated this money for this band shell. And on the face of it, that would seem like a wonderful thing. But I guess if you're going to donate a gift, why is there not something set up in this community that says, here are the things that we need to have done? Anyone who wants to donate dollars, here's a list of things that really are considered a top priority based on the citizens, based on the city council, based on budget needs. Pick something off of this list and you contribute your dollars to that. And have a plan.
Yes.
You know, keep a plan in mind. Now, the argument will be, well, there is a plan. It's called the redevelopment plan for downtown, and LDR put it together, and we spent a lot of time having citizens meetings.
But LDR, I'm sorry to interject again, LDR, the consultant firm that put together the downtown redevelopment project, did not include a band shell and all the other little frilly things that go around with it, because this band shell thing only came up last year when the Leaches decided to donate the money for it.
I guess my point here is that it speaks to the issue that you talked about when Eileen Conley-Kiesler is telling council member Paul Esslinger the reason that they haven't solicited public input as to whether or not this project would be something that the public could support was because they couldn't afford to rent a hall, that became too expensive. If we as a city could afford to rent halls to have LDR talk about an entire plan, certainly when we're expending these kinds of dollars, it would be most advantageous. One of the reasons that this whole downtown redevelopment had progressed to the point that it did, I was the mayor at the time, and one of the things that I said is, you must have public input. You must have public buy-in. You cannot continue to operate in a vacuum as you have in years past. We have spent millions upon millions of dollars over the course of the history of downtown with pavers and streetscaping, and then we tear out the pavers and we put pavers back in, and we take a statue and we move it over here. We are so busy being busy to look like we're doing something, but it doesn't facilitate what it is that we need to do down there, and that is to create an environment of commerce, to get business booming. A park that has a band shell that will operate in evening hours does not facilitate commerce.
No,
Not when commerce ends, because we don't have businesses that seem to understand that they can't close at 5 o'clock or open at 10 and close at 5 and expect that anyone's going to make the trip to downtown. Not when you can go out to a greenfield mall that has unlimited parking, you can do multiple stops and get what you need. It's easy, it's convenient, and it's timely. You need to, if you want to act like a specialty area, then you're going to have to create specialty shops and give people what they want. They have not listened to the community as to what they wanted. That's why nobody is responding. No one will continue to respond because they're not asking for input. The movers and shakers are deciding once again the direction of this community, and all we are getting is the bill.
Well, and the Oshkosh-Northwestern, the Sunday prior to that vote being taken at the first meeting in, the last meeting in May, the Sunday prior to that meeting, they ran an editorial saying that there were only a handful of people who opposed
How would they know
this
that?
project. Well, that's my point.
Yeah.
They did no online poll. Where at their site, there's always an online poll. I think it maybe changes once a week or whatever. They did no online poll. I don't believe that they did a call survey type thing on the phone.
Well, I'll be honest with you, even
So-
if they had facilitated those things, I wouldn't trust the Northwestern
Well, no.
to give unskewed results, because the Northwestern sits on the Downtown Redevelopment Committee.
Of course.
Their opinions, their views are skewed because they directly benefit from our tax dollars being spent to beautify their neighborhood.
That's right.
And my problem with all of this is we keep using this word, Oshkosh needs to be progressive. We need to be, I guess when I look in the Webster's dictionary, I don't see under progressive saying, spend money you don't have as stupidly as you can, as fast as you can. That is not the definition of progressive.
It should, progressive, not poor. Okay.
Well, and
they're running us into the poorhouse.
There is nothing progressive about ill thought out plans with no thought process as to who's going to manage this, who's going to maintain it, who is going to get the entertainment for the venue.
Exactly. All these questions that Burke Tower asked but never got an answer to, and yet he supported the stupid project anyway.
And that is my point. What is progressive about not having a step-by-step plan for success. They have set themselves up for failure from the get-go. They have the public disenchanted. They haven't done their homework. The budgetary concessions made for this will come back and bite them in the hind end because they've bonded long-term. Our bonded indebtedness in the city is rising at a rate that we will not be able to sustain long-term. We will then have to pass on essential service projects for this kind of capital bonding. We're going to have to, there's going to be a trade-off. What is this community now going to have to do without, because we've sped through this process with no public input and no concern, no planning? And what is the long-term maintenance of this type of facility? And who's responsible?
Well,
my problem with this is, if we really felt as though at every stage that we do, first it's the there with the Walgreens Park, and I call it Walgreens because they knocked down a perfectly good building which facilitated grocery stores, drugstore, and convenience store all in one, available to that area community, which was invaluable to them.
Yes.
Okay, Walgreens made the decision, that wasn't the city. But instead of trying to encourage Walgreens to stay there because it was something the community wanted and needed, we just let them go and boom, let's knock down.
Or bringing in, when Walgreens decided they were going to go, trying to bring in some other type, like an Osco drug or
whatever.
You know.
Whatever would have facilitated those same types of services.
Correct.
Because that is what that neighborhood overwhelmingly says that they want down there. You keep hearing it over and over again. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure this out.
No.
And so then we knock down a perfectly good building that is taxable base, and we fill it in with grass because, ladies and gentlemen, that's the there. I'll tell you, I will have nightmares about that term. It makes me want to cough up a hairball.
Well, who brought up the word there?
It was LDR.
Okay.
And because we needed a there, and what that there meant was that there had to be a place to go, a gathering center for pedestrian traffic. I'm not kidding you, this is how they talked. For pedestrian traffic and a gathering place for a civic area. Okay, we got that. All right, so that was going to be, and I kid you not, this is going to be the thing that turns around downtown. That
Hasn't happened.
That is going to be the thing. Well, okay, that didn't work. The there isn't doing it. Okay? So now we've moved the there attention to over there, about 2 blocks over to the riverfront, which is, quite frankly, where I think we should have started because it is a natural resource.
It is on the river.
It's on the river. I think we could have done beautiful things with specialty areas and walkways and promenades and boat traffic and things like that. But of course, I digress because what the hell do I know? I'm not a there kind of person. So now the there didn't work. So now we're moving 2 blocks down, and we're going to create another gathering venue with a big old cap so nobody can see the river anymore, with a berm around it so nobody can see the river anymore. And then we're going to put seating for what? They talked to like 7,000 people.
Yeah.
Okay, am I the only one in Oshkosh that understands that there's not parking for 7,000 people? Am I the only person that looks at that area and said, where does one put 7,000 people for another there? And God, let's just say that we're actually successful with this, and we have 2 there's. So we have no parking at the original there, and now we have no parking at the other there.
Well, as Shirley Brabender-Maddox said on the council dais, people will be able to park in business parking lots. So thank you, Shirley. I mean, she
made
just
her
made
point.
the point for us that it's not going to be helping the downtown businesses. They will be closed, and their parking lots will be utilized for people attending concerts or whatever in the amphitheater.
Well, that's if we can actually secure talent, because we don't know who's going to manage this thing.
Well, I think talent will be able to be secured. I don't see the problem there. And again, Mel, I don't think either one of us at this table thinks that the band shell is in and of itself a bad idea.
I do.
It was donated So let's not look a gift horse in the mouth.
Eh.
They donated it. Let's put it up. But why did we need all this other stuff to
See,
go
I
with it?
disagree with that. Just because it's donated doesn't mean it's right for our community. Okay? Somebody might want to donate a tank to put in the park too. I mean, we have that in Red Arrow Park. It works great. It's a veterans memorial type thing, and it works there. But let's say they want to donate another tank and put it smack in the middle of, what do they call that park now? Opera House Square?
Well, whatever. In the there, the original
there. That doesn't necessarily work in that location. What
Okay.
I'm saying is that by virtue of a donation does not make it the right thing. It means that one person or a small group of people thinks it's a darn good idea. Why not take it to the public and say, yeah, we think that's a good idea? Because the bottom line here is that park belongs to all of
everybody.
us.
Yeah.
That does not belong to this city council, this city manager, this city mayor. It belongs to our children. It belongs to our grandparents. And that is something that we have to take into consideration is this the best use for this property? We do that all over the city. With zoning and planning, and we beat the crap out of developers because, boy, you've got to think about how the roads are going to be used and intersections and street signage and ingress and egress, and there is not 1 ounce of planning by our city, not by Jackson Kinney, not by Dick Woolink, and certainly not by the city council. There has not been 1 ounce of planning or strategy or thought process just for this to be successful from a
agree.
venue. But then let's talk about success down the road and how this is going to be paid for. And that we as taxpayers never got a say so as to whether or not we thought that this was in times where we are having shortfalls and cutbacks. Was this the best time for us to do this?
Well, I want to go back to your comments about, is this the proper place for an amphitheater, band shell, whatever you want to call it. And I guess I agree with you to a point. However, the point still remains that say the public had said, hey, this is a dandy spot for this. Or the council, because after all, we do put the council in positions of decision-making power. Well, I certainly haven't put some of these council members in there, but the majority of people did. Anyway, even if everyone had said this is a good spot for it, we didn't need all this other stuff. The band shell was donated, so put it up. I'm not against progressiveness. But what irritates me about some of these business folks is they had the audacity to send letters to the city council members saying, hey, this is a good thing, support this, blah, blah, blah. But not one of them mentioned how much money they were going to, or their businesses were going to kick in for this project. And I'm sorry, but during the workshop, which I think you watched, and I certainly watched, the impression was certainly given that money would be sought out, that a fundraising campaign would be undertaken.
Right.
And I thought the impression was certainly given that those funds would offset the bondedness that this city was going for. And clearly now, that is not the case. Dick Woolink said at the council meeting the night this passed that is not the case because some of this money is going to be paying for bathrooms and nobody wants to donate to bathrooms. Well, excuse me, snobs, everyone uses a bathroom, everyone flushes a toilet. It's a fact of life, so it's not as sexy as paying for something else. Big deal. If you want all the little extras that go along with this project, then somebody has to pay for it. And why should the taxpayers again? Whatever money is donated, it should go, I'm sorry, but it should go to offset whatever the amount is that we eventually bond for here. And it will come out to be $4 or $5 million. I don't care what they say, because that's exactly what the plans show. When this is all said and done, it's going to be $4 to $5 million. And that, of course, includes the purchase price for the contaminated land, which was $1 million something to begin with. But, you mentioned before, and I want to finish up on this, but you mentioned before about an ill thought out plan. And Tom Stefani, our parks director, now Tom is a very nice man, but I don't think he has anywhere near the answers for this project that he should have had. This council should not have voted for this project until there were specific answers given and a plan, as you said, put in place. Is this going to turn out to be like another thing that Tom Stefani has done to Menominee Park? He has destroyed that park with all these high fences around for his wolf exhibit. A wolf exhibit, wolves are shy animals. You can stand there for an hour and a half. They've upped the price now of the ticket to get into the zoo, so you go in there and you can stand for at least an hour and a half and hardly ever see one single wolf. But yet the entire park is destroyed. There used to be a beautiful view of the lake from anywhere in that park.
And the council had nothing to say about that.
No.
He just took it upon himself to do the stockade fence because evidently that was some sort of requirement in order to have the wolf.
Well, it's like a fortress now.
But the problem was he forgot to communicate that was going to be one of the things that needed to be done in the city's oldest, quote-unquote, jewel of a park.
Well, it's not a jewel anymore. It's
Well,
been destroyed.
I want to go back to your comments about the bathrooms and,
Yeah.
it's not very sexy. The reason it's not sexy is because you can't put a plaque on a flusher. I mean, what are you going to do?
Well-
Bob Jones donated the flusher. I mean,
Well, maybe they can put little plaques right above in the urinals where you push the button to flush or whatever.
Well, and that's the bottom line. This is about recognition, acknowledgement, the who's who of the community, who's really running the show, and you can tell who's running the show by who's got the biggest monument onto themselves. And
This
that's
flush brought to you by. How about
yeah,
that?
yeah. Your people at Oshkosh by gosh.
But we shouldn't be upset about this, Mel. We shouldn't, because this is not costing us, you and I, that much money. And I say this all tongue-in-cheek. And you know where I'm going with this.
Of course.
At the council meeting, for anyone who missed that meeting or missed the quote in the paper the day after the meeting, Councilwoman Shirley Maddox tried to put it in perspective, and she asked our city manager, Dick Wollink, how much this project was going to cost the average taxpayer who owned a $100,000 home. And, he threw some facts and figures out there, and the bottom line was it was going to cost basically $7 a year per $100,000 household for 20 years. Now this woman, and I know what she was trying to do, it's kind of like the commercials where for just a cost of a cup of coffee a day, you can sponsor this child in wherever. But this woman then says, so basically for the cost of 2 Butterburger baskets. Butterburger baskets? What is, I mean,
it's you know what it is, Cheryl?
It's insulting. Now, for anyone who doesn't know what a Butterburger is, I mean, it's basically Culver Restaurant's version of a hamburger. But but that would only be the cost of 2 Butterburger baskets with your senior discount card, which neither you or I get, but she does. Lucky her. So, again, I understand the comment that the direction she was trying to go by putting it in some kind of perspective. But the fact remains, maybe we all don't like Butterburgers. Maybe some of us do, but maybe we just can't afford this, Shirley. Some people in this city can't. Maybe I can, maybe you can, maybe Melanie can, maybe a lot of people can, but everybody can't. There's a lot of people in this community on fixed incomes. Why don't you go walking through some of the poorer neighborhoods in this community and see how these people live, talk to some of these folks? Why don't you go sit at Walmart's pharmacy, Kmart's pharmacy, Shopko's pharmacy, and talk to some of these folks, or just listen to their comments to the pharmacist when they give them their prescriptions and they see that a prescription is going to cost them $300, $400, $500, $600 for 1 or 2 months' supplies, and see them break down in tears, wondering how in the hell they're going to pay for it. This is a sham, and it's a shame. And, even though a lot of us maybe can afford $7 a year, how many times can we afford $7 here and $7 there? It all adds up. You've got a safety building that you just bought. We have to put up a new city garage that keeps getting put off and put off and put off. Squad cars, of course, the cost of those pale in comparison to some of this other stuff. But nonetheless, we've got roads that are falling apart and are in just absolutely deplorable condition. And, so you got a few Butterburgers here and a few Butterburgers there and a few Butterburgers elsewhere. And why don't we buy a Culver's franchise, because we're going to need every bit of those profits to help pay for the things that you people have indebted us for. This is absolutely ridiculous.
Well, and I couldn't agree with you more, and I think it goes even beyond whether we can afford it. When you simplify something to that base level, you're right, it absolutely is insulting. It is the cost of a couple of Butterburger baskets. That particular project, as you said, that project. But let's talk about stormwater management. Let's talk about the sewer treatment plant that we've had to bond for. Let's talk about the water treatment, the sewer treatment. Start adding all of the things that we have, and then make sure that while our major projects have been bonded for and we've done without far more than Butterburgers, we're doing without medication and foods and vegetables and housing in some cases, then let's, for what my problem is it's not just about whether you can or can't afford it. I think it goes beyond that. I should be able to tell you if I want to afford it. I should be able to tell you if I think that's a good idea or not. And I do think that when we aren't meeting base needs in this community, not just from a city level, but from a county level, as far as basic human services that people are doing without, that we actually have 5 people that have lost such touch with what's going on in their community. They don't understand the suffering. They don't understand the doing without. They don't understand trying to stretch that dollar until you, honest to God, don't know where you can squeeze another penny out of it. They don't get it. And when you have someone like Shirley Maddox, who has the nerve to get up on the council dais and say, well, I've been to Europe and France and London, and when I saw this at the... Shirley, do you understand that the greater majority of your constituency will never, ever leave the state of Wisconsin? They won't leave because they can't. We don't have the vacation time. We don't have the resources. We simply just don't have the money. And for you to come out and talk to us about all the culture that we don't seem to get, and we don't seem to understand the broader human thing, we have to understand how other cultures live. Surely, many of us are basically just trying to get through every single day, just making it. The thought of being able to go get the damn Butterburger is all we're hanging on to, and you took that! That takes nerve, that you can be that out of touch with what's going on in your community. We just did a show before this one where we had the Director of Human Services of Winnebago County coming in and telling us that we have elderly and young doing without in this community. Doing without. And you have the nerve to tell us that we need a band shell to entertain certain groups of people, because I can guarantee you, this is not going to be a free concert for all.
No.
We're going to be selling tickets. And ladies and gentlemen, the blue collar we have on today, I can guarantee you that most of us aren't going to be able to afford the ticket. Kind of like what they did with the Grand. You get to pay for it because we're lucky enough to have a city-owned, beautiful building. But guess what? You folks who have been busting your hump to pay the bills and do without the Butterburgers, you can't afford the ticket to get in and enjoy the entertainment. My husband and I think, have been in the Grand twice. In my entire life, I've lived in this community 43 years. I've been in the Grand 2 times in my entire life.
Well, again, it's really kind of silly when they do things like this and indebt us to the point that they have, and yet it was only at the beginning of this year that they started charging us to have certain things removed. couches, chairs, what have you.
And fees up the wazoo.
Well, sure. You know, you have to pay every time you want something like that removed. You can no longer just put it out on the curb on trash night and have the garbage man take it away. You have to pay a fee to have that done. So we have to pay fees to have things that we're throwing out taken away. We have to pay for that. But, oh, and we have to close our municipal pool.
Yes.
As we tape this, we're taping this on June 3rd. And by the way, happy birthday, Jeremy. He'll know what that means. And he knows who he is. But it's my nephew. He's 14 today. As we tape this, I digress, on June 3rd, we are 1 week away from school getting out. And, you know, we're sitting here with kids who, for the first time in generations, aren't going to be able to have a municipal pool to go to.
But that's not a problem.
Because the city has closed that because, and I don't remember, how much was it going to cost? Do you remember to fix that up?
I know that it was going to be, you know, a very expensive venture, but that is something
but
that
nothing like this.
No, but I mean, this is something that they've known has been coming for years.
And when we say very expensive, I don't think we're talking over $100,000 and some here, are we?
I would be lying to you. I don't remember anymore. But my point is that they have known the condition of that structure, Pollock Pool. Mm-hmm. They've known the structure and the condition and or the deterioration over a period of time. And again, if planning is done, you plan for those maintenance issues as they go. And here's the argument that's made. Well, we don't have the budget to maintain those things anymore. We had to cut. We lost shared revenue. Understandable, ladies and gentlemen of the administration. I get that if we have to prioritize. But if we close a building that we already own and have refused to be able to maintain due to shortfalls, what in the Sam hell are we doing? Taking on more responsibility so that we have more to maintain.
I absolutely agree with you. And what will become of Pollock Pool? Is it just going to sit there?
Well, maybe we can drain the water out and let kids skateboard around it.
Well, no, they've got a skate park right next door.
We could just make it one big one.
You know, I mean, this is the point. I mean, you know, we just let these things go.
Brains.
Why? Explain this to me if you can. You were on the council for nearly 12 years.
And I feel every inch of it.
Why does the city, or maybe they do, I mean, I know that they put things away into a fund for catastrophic problems, but do they ever put things away into a reserve account for capital expenses like this? You know, when I lived in Colorado, I was the president of a homeowners association there, and part of the monthly dues that we charged from the owners of each condominium and townhome unit, a portion of that went into a reserve account to take care of a roof on a building when it started to go, or to take care of the maintenance of the property if some catastrophic thing happened.
Sure.
You know,
you have a very different set of circumstances in running a city, because you have to remember that, let's just use the Parks Department as an example. You have all of your own staff. Mm-hmm. You know, with the exception of things like a pool going to heck. If you have a concrete pool that's got cracks, or you have a filtration system that goes to heck, obviously you have to contract out for services for those types of things to be fixed. There's also other things that you have to contend with. When Pollock Pool was built, it was cutting edge at its time. The city of Oshkosh has a history of being frugal and allowing things to have a longer life than maybe what they were meant to. And I understand that. And sometimes trying to retrofit a 50-year-old pool with 2004 technology is not always the easiest thing to try to do. Just due to old construction and new codes and things like that. But my point is that while I understand the difficulties of melding old technology with new technology with cutbacks, that does not change. This band shell will have the same set of circumstances in its lifetime.
If it's not taken care of. And I guess that's the point.
And we do have a general fund, which is supposed to be for overall city catastrophes, but each of these departments has contractual services built in, maintenance things. And what the department heads are supposed to be going through is, okay, these are the services that we provide under our umbrella. These are the things that we're going to have to look at in the next couple of years that need to be maintained, fixed, eliminated, what have you. Those all must be built into either their operational budget, depending on how much is associated as far as cost, or a capital improvements program for long-term bonding, depending on that cost.
So why wasn't this pool maintained all along?
There was no money.
Well, but there should have been.
But there wasn't.
And that's part of the problem here. That's
And there's
the biggest.
still, Cheryl, there still is no money.
I know, and that is the biggest part of the problem.
Yeah, I mean,
you know,
the bottom line
start
is,
putting money away. You
Well-
know that things are eventually going to wear out.
but Cheryl, my point is that we shut down Pollock Pool because there was no money and it wasn't cared for in a way that we could, at the end of its life, go back and say, okay, we can reasonably expend these kinds of dollars to get a couple more years out. There's still no money for the band shell and that capital expenditure. There is no money. Please remember, in the first part of the budget, we were looking at, as a city, getting rid of firefighters due to the loss of shared revenue, cutting services. They were actually talking about closing the Witzel Street Recycling Center, the drop-off center.
Yes.
They were talking about a lot of things that they were actually going to close. Now, how do you go from a deficit situation where you're actually considering closing firehouses, which, by the way, we just built to the tune of millions of dollars, closing those, to bonding for millions of dollars for pavers in a park, so we've got a there so people with no disposable income in our community can listen to some phantom band because we don't know if we're going to get it. And by the way, don't bring the car because there's no parking. Okay, I think we've beaten the crap
Even
out
if
of
we
this
came
one.
by boat, we'd fill up the river with seating for 7,000. Something else that is going to be coming up, well, by the time this airs, this will probably have aired only one time before the council meeting, but the restaurants, a number of restaurants in town have sued the city. And it's over the smoking ban. What was it, 27 or 22 restaurants that have sued the city. And it's going to 27. Now, it's very interesting because
There would actually be more than 27, but some of them have taken such a huge hit in their revenues, they couldn't afford to ante up to even get an attorney.
yes, that's correct. So, and I was told that by at least 2 restaurants.
Yep.
So,
As was I.
you know, it's interesting because what's going to end up happening here, what the lawsuit is asking to happen is 3 different things. Number one, they're asking that the city council just throw out the ban altogether. Well, I don't think that should happen. I don't think that should happen. I'm not in favor of the ban, but I don't think that should happen. The second thing is that it could, the city council could put a moratorium on this thing, basically putting a hold on it until a judge rules on whether or not it's a legal and constitutional ordinance. And the third thing is leave the ordinance in place, and along with that, pay the restaurants damages for their losses. Well, I think that of the 3 options, putting a moratorium or a stay on this thing until a judge can make a decision is the best way to go. But here's the thing, you know, can the city council do that? This is a binding referendum put in place by voters. And can the city, if the city couldn't overturn it, I'm wondering if the city council can even put a stay on it. Maybe I'm not a lawyer, and I don't even play one on TV, but you know, maybe the better route to have gone, I don't know, is to ask a judge for a temporary restraining order or an injunction until this can get in front of a judge. I don't know. The attorneys maybe had some idea in mind, but I'm not sure that the city council can do anything here. Its hands may be tied, but we'll see. But the interesting part of this is that The suit asks the city council to make a decision. Now, remember when Burke Tower was running for
Oh, yes.
office, and he sat here in this chair, and we asked him what his position on this was, and he very smugly sat back and said that he was not going to take a position on it because, after all, it had been decided on, or it would be decided on by the voters at the polls on April 6th, and then it would be all history. Well, guess what, B Tower? It's coming back to bite you. You're going to be asked to make a decision, and maybe you won't have to, because maybe the city council doesn't have any say here. But nonetheless, you're being asked by a lawsuit to make a decision, and this is one time when you're not going to be able to sit on the fence post, ride that fence post, and get splinters in your
Backside.
derriere. I don't know,
It's going to be interesting. I mean, we've done moratoriums before, but certainly not on a direct legislation move.
Yeah.
But it will be interesting. It'll be. I'm fascinated by this. I really am. I'm looking forward to see what's going to happen.
Something else that is being looked at on a county-wide basis, but it was kind of interesting. I was at this meeting of the County Parks Department the other day, and it's been in the paper quite a bit. The county is looking at imposing user fees for on the soccer and rugby clubs, organized sports organizations that are using these fields out there. There were people up in arms over this user fee. Now, I understand the logic behind this. They're upset and everybody's bills are going up. All of our expenses continue to rise. This is nothing new, and I understand that. And especially if you've got more than one child playing soccer, it can get to be costly. But some of their arguments, I mean, one guy who I think he's the president of the Oshkosh Youth Soccer Club or whatever, but he said, where are all our tax dollars going? Well, if he's been paying attention to the paper, he can see that a lot of our tax dollars aren't coming back to us in the form of shared revenues. So maybe he needs to be talking to his state legislators, his assembly people about that. And I guess, none of us likes user fees.
No.
But, and whether you want to call them a user fee or a tax, see, I call it a user fee because a tax I view as something that everybody pays for. And clearly, something like this, everybody is not paying for. Just those who use it are paying for it. And that's why it's called a user fee. Just like when we had a municipal pool, even though it was owned and operated by the city parks department, you couldn't just go there for free. You had to buy either a season pass, or you had to pay as you go each time you went. We weren't calling that a tax. We were paying to use something. And that has happened for years. And when the city actually ran the municipal golf course, that was owned by the city. It was run by the Parks Department once upon a time. But we all couldn't go there and golf for free. We had to pay greens fees. So I think this is just, even though we don't like these things and we don't like having to continue paying for this, that, and the other, this is becoming a reality because shared revenues have gotten cut. They're going to continue to get cut, and things are continuing to go up. These are becoming a reality, and we just need to, I guess, ante up or maybe not do so many things.
Well, the community can't be all things to all people. I mean, there is a limited financial stream that flows to the city and the county. There is a limited amount of personnel that you can have based on that financial stream, and there's a limited amount of services that you can provide based on the financials and the personnel. And people that get up in arms at this stage and say, but you're taxing the children. Hello, where you been? Your kids have been taxed with textbooks, for God's sake,
Sure.
And nobody had a word to say about that. But boy, if you tax a soccer ball, it's all of a sudden, holy crap, what am I going to do?
Well, the thing of it is, and they made points about equity, and things being equitable. They said, well, then are you going to charge a user fee for someone who comes down on a weekend and just uses the field? Well, obviously you can't be out there policing the soccer fields, 24/7.
But that's a
But
first come, first serve. That's
that is
luck of the draw.
and that's an interesting thing. If they don't want to pay some kind of a fee, because they are reserving these fields when other taxpayers like you and I can't go out there and use them. Although I don't think ever in our 10 or 11 years of friendship we've ever gone to play soccer together.
No.
Or any other sport for that matter.
Thank God. It could be ugly. There could be a liability issue with the slip fall rule.
But, nonetheless, if we wanted to, we couldn't on nights when they have these fields reserved. So if they don't want to pay some kind of a fee, then maybe they should just take their chances that they're going to have fields available to them on their practice nights and their game days.
Well, I think one of their arguments too is that, listen, we've done a lot and we've supported this through our volunteer services, and we've done a lot to help the fields and do these kinds of things. And I understand that, but there's a lot of people who have done a lot of volunteer work. I did a lot of volunteer work at the senior center and raising money, and but I'm not under the misguided notion that when I'm at the age where I'm going to be wanting to use the senior center for services, that I'm going to be able to walk in and say, hey, don't you remember I was one of the people that did the volunteer work, helped you find the funding, and was on your design committee. I mean, that it just doesn't work that way. And I understand that people are of limited incomes, but this is a way of life, and these people who are complaining that there's a fee structure have not been paying attention to the budget process in either their cities or communities, and they really need to get off their duffs and pay attention, because it is not until it hits something that they care about that all of a sudden this is a crisis, and we're how far into the budget? I mean,
Right.
do they not understand that this is something, we're working into the next budget cycle, people. I mean, you need to be on top and pay attention to what needs to be paid attention to. Not just because it's soccer, not just because it's your street, but really get yourself educated and informed about what's going on and who are the people that are making the decisions in your community. Because maybe if other things were done without or what have you, this wouldn't be an issue.
Well, one of the other things that kind of ties in with that, and you mentioned it before, was the stormwater utility.
Yes.
Now, Mike Norton from the county board had sent a letter to a number of people, including a great many elected officials, asking for their support in getting the county parks department exempted from the city of Oshkosh's water utility, stormwater utility program. Now, and he even said that, if we could be exempted from this, then perhaps we wouldn't have to institute this user fee for organized sports. Now, he can cut that, and at the meeting he kind of said, well, Mr. Esslinger, because Paul Esslinger was there, he said, that's not entirely what I meant, because Paul was challenging him on that. He said, it's a little hypocritical of you to, ask us to exempt you from the stormwater utility fee, but yet you're asking these folks to pay a fee. And Mike was trying to kind of tap dance around this, but the bottom line is, he said right in his own letter, and there's no other way to put it, he said right in there that if they could be exempted, then perhaps they wouldn't have to charge the user fee. Now, where does the county get off? And they will probably eventually be coming to the city council asking to be exempted. And if the city council exempts them from that, then we need to start a recall movement on every one of those council members because that we could possibly recall. Because it's just, this is ridiculous. Why should
The
they be
city's
exempted?
not exempt from its own city stormwater management program. The city itself,
Right.
that had to implement the program and
Yeah.
spend the staff
Yeah.
time and do the studies and the engineering and do all of the things that was required of us from the feds and the state in order to implement this program, cannot exempt itself.
Right.
So it seems a little asinine to suggest that a county entity like the county park and we have to be careful because Mike Norton is the one who is suggesting that this be done, and I don't want it to look like the administration for the county or Rob Wade with the Parks Department or anyone else is suggesting that that's a good idea, because I've not heard any of them suggest that the exemption is their idea. Mike Norton, however, is the one who put his name on it.
Well, I think Rob Way, though, the director of the Parks Department for the county, I'm not sure, but this may have come about from him.
Suggesting that those costs were prohibitive to continuing free programming for soccer.
No, suggesting that perhaps they could be exempt. We, the city, could exempt them.
Oh,
and
okay.
I found it really difficult to follow Mike's letter because he had a couple forwarded emails on there. You know, I found it really hard to follow it. But my thought was that Rob Way had somehow brought this up, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I don't know, and like I said, Mike Norton's name has been the one that's associated with this, so I'm going to keep it to that, which I know. But again, my point is that the city has done all the engineering, has done all the research, has done all the legwork and just the arduous task of putting this thing together and hearing after hearing and, you know, amending and changing all this. So we finally get a program that we think is going to facilitate our needs, because it has to be done. This is not something that, gee whiz, let's be clever and find ways to generate revenue. Right. This is, it must be done for the Clean Water Act.
It's a federal mandate.
And this also should not be a surprise, because I talked about this in our capital improvements programs, that these costs could be into the $14 million to $24 million. And every time we spent money, I said, but gentlemen, we have to consider stormwater management. And everybody went, well, that's a ways off, let's not worry about it. Fine. But here's my point with county. The county asked to be annexed into the city in order to receive services. They've gotten those services. They get the benefit of all the services, and that's fine. And they provide things, you know, I mean, they provide entertainment and venues and so forth. With being a part of a city comes certain responsibilities. The county understands budgetary concessions, budgetary strife. To suggest that a responsible individual could say that, well, listen, let us off the hook and everything will be fine, so you can tax a smaller group of people to get what you need, instead of spreading it out over more people, because, by the way, it won't stop them from contributing to the stormwater runoff problem.
Right.
But we're just going to tax a smaller group of people to take care of your water problems. Now, does that seem even remotely intelligent or fair? I mean, I understand what Mike's trying to do. He's trying to look out for his bigger constituency. And it was a shot in the dark. Not a good one. It was a shot in the dark.
Well, just very quickly, because we're running out of time very fast.
That went quick.
But, you know, his comment was, one of his comments was, you know, we shouldn't have to be taxing each other. That was, or charging each other fees.
Well, then we shouldn't have to have a sheriff's department, because we already have a PD. What do we need a sheriff's department for?
Well, and I'm sure that there are things that the county's charging us for.
Sure.
You know,
The
fees,
safety building,
taxes,
for one.
whatever.
We just bought a safety building.
From the county.
Yeah. Why don't you just give us the building, Mike? Gee whiz, we're neighbors.
Well, this hour went very quickly.
That's what happens when you pound the tar out of people.
We spent most of it talking about the band shell, but that's okay, because that is a tremendously big project.
Tell
and it
people
needed
we
to be
want to
talked
hear
about.
from them. Tell them we want to hear what they have to say.
You just did.
I just did. Please.
In any event, thanks very much for joining us, and we do love hearing from you. We've been hearing from a lot of you, and please continue. All right, that's going to do it for now. We'll see you next time. Until then, take care and keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.